And welcome to the GM Shuffle presented by VSiN and DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Dave Ross alongside Geoff Schwartz. Geoff, great to have you with us here on the GM Shuffle today. I got to ask you, as a former player, you know what it means and what it takes to become a successful player in this league. Did you ever have visions of being a GM? Did you go, man, I can do what those guys do in the front office?
No chance, because the hours that it takes to do those jobs is immense. I mean, we put in hours as players that are, minuscule compared to front office personnel. If they just told me, Geoff Schwartz, here's a GM job, and I don't have to do any of the low level scouting first, work my way up through the ranks, maybe I would do it. But I mean, it's a lot of work, and I really do appreciate the work that really goes into becoming a general manager first, and then the film you're watching, the scouting, the traveling, and it's just a lot of things I'm not willing to do at my current level of excitement for the National Football League. So, obviously a high pressure job. I mean, there are times, of course, I think to myself, I could have picked a better player in the draft than that GM, but obviously I'm not willing to put in the time or effort to actually do that in real life.
Yeah, right. I think that's a lesson for all those armchair GMs out there. This is not easy work, and this is that time of year as we prepare for the NFL draft, obviously coming up later on this month. So it is not easy, as you certainly know, even as a former player, let alone people on the outside truly looking in. Let's get to some of the offseason news that we have this week that presented to us by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly out there. But let's get to it, because I think the big news this week, Geoff, certainly is around what's happening in the draft. It feels like, I don't want to say it's done for Cam Ward at #1 to Tennessee, but it does feel like now all of a sudden we're hearing those rumors that maybe it's Travis Hunter 2 to Cleveland. What does that mean for sure Sanders and what the Giants potentially could be doing at 3? Did you see this? Maybe it's a lot of smoke too, Geoff, because you got to throw those things out at this time of the year. What do you make of those reports that it feels like Travis Hunter is going to go to 2 Cleveland overall?
Look, this time of year is very fascinating, because the information that we get is more speculation. It's sort of what people hear, right, from teams. It's also sort of wildly changes based on perception and video of things happening. So, for example, Colorado had their pro day, and the Browns were there, and there was video of the Browns at pro day. There was reports coming out the Browns met with Sanders and also met with Travis Hunter, and they liked Travis Hunter. Well, of course, Travis Hunter is great. Of course you like him. I've interviewed him before on other jobs I've done, and people that I know that have talked to him. Great kid. Like, of course you would like Travis Hunter as a player, as a person. And so you come out of that pro day, it's like Browns like Travis Hunter. Well, of course they do. It doesn't mean they're going to draft him second overall. And you look at the Browns right now and where they're positioned. Are they going to go in the season with Kenny Pickett at quarterback? Is that their plan? Are they going to draft Jalen Milroe? Are they going to draft Quinn Ewers in the second round or Tyler Sharp? I would say no. And maybe they're positioning to, maybe someone wants to trade up to 2 and the Browns move back and get Jackson Dart in the first round somewhere. So I don't necessarily believe they're going Hunter at 2. I will hold out that it will be Sanders till the very end there, because I just think that the Browns can't go into a season with Kenny Pickett as their quarterback.
It's absolutely fascinating to see what the scuttlebutt is here at this time and how much that might change before we actually get to draft day. Later on in the program, too, you've got some really interesting futures on what position teams might draft. We'll get to that later on here on this edition of the GM Shuffle. But it is interesting that you talked about it before we came on the air today, Geoff, the fascination that people have with backup quarterbacks and that market that we're seeing out there. And I think a lot of people now are looking at the Cowboys making a trade with the Patriots to get Joe Milton. So he comes to Dallas for a 7th round pick. That's going to be number 217 overall for a 2025 5th round pick. That's number 171. What did you make of that move? And is it a whole lot of nothing, or is there really something to read between the lines here?
Whole lot of nothing. People love backup quarterbacks, right? It's everyone's favorite. I want to raise my son to be a backup quarterback. Just hold that clipboard and play twice a year, play really well in spot situations. As the quarterback gets hurt, you come in second half of games, teams haven't prepared for you, you play really well. Milton's a backup for a reason, right? He goes to a Cowboys team that needs a backup. I think you look at a lot of teams right now that want to contend, right? They have to have a good backup. Your quarterback does get hurt in the National Football League. You want a guy that can do some things with his legs, his athleticism in those situations where he might not be comfortable in the entire offense yet if he's to come in. But Dak Prescott's there for a long time. And that's not changing because Joe Milton's there now. That the contract stipulates Dak has to be there. I love the spin of it where they sent him where he wanted to go and the Patriots took a lesser offer. Get out of here. I don't believe any of that. Get out of here with that. They took a lesser offer for a backup quarterback to send him. Why do the Patriots care so much about Joe Milton's feelings? They sent him to the one place he wanted to go, and that place is to where he's not going to play. So we love backup quarterbacks. Oh, look, Milton might be a star in the making. I'm doubtful about that, but he's not going to play in Dallas. Dak Prescott's the quarterback there.
Totally agree. And again, they need a backup quarterback there because Trey Lance is gone. Cooper Rush is gone. So the guys behind Dak Prescott last year have been wiped out of that quarterback room. Trey Lance goes and signs a one-year deal with the Chargers. Geoff, I don't know how many opportunities you get, but when you are a high draft pick, certainly as a top 3 pick like he was back in the day in San Francisco, and then you get moved to Dallas, and it didn't work out in Dallas either. They gave him a lot of run in the preseason, and now he's on his third team. You look at the size of a guy like Trey Lance, you go, man, the body type, the athleticism, it all jumps off the page, but it has not translated. Is this the last chance hotel, if you will, for Trey Lance in LA?
So 2 things are happening right now that I find really interesting. One is draft slot bias, right? I was a 7th round pick. So I saw this in the other direction where, if you're a 7th round pick, you get none of the chances that Trey Lance has gone. Okay. Like that's totally true. But the second thing about this that I find so interesting, and I maybe I should look this up before I say it, but has there been a quarterback drafted at the top of the draft like this who really has never gotten a chance? Like Trey Lance has never gotten a chance, Dave. Like when has this chance ever happened? There have been quarterbacks that have busted, but they've got a chance to actually succeed. The Niners immediately said after he got hurt, like, no more chance for you. He's never had a chance. Now, could he be the worst quarterback? And doesn't matter the chance that I want him to have or think he should have, but I think he started three games in his career. Like he started 2 in 21, 2 in 22, and he started 1 last season at the very end of the season. So he started 5 games in his career, 5 games for a top 5 pick, a quarterback. Anyone else started less? I mean, we've seen a ton of busts. They get 2 seasons, 3 seasons to figure it out. He's got no chance to do this. And so that's what I find so interesting about Trey Lance. I don't know if he's good or bad. He didn't play much in college. It was a COVID year. He hasn't played a lot of football, and no one's given him the chance. He's not going to get it in San Diego, Los Angeles. Not going to get it there either. So I find it so fascinating that 1, the draft slot bias, right? If he's a 7th round pick, he'd never be where he's at. But 2 is that on the other end, he's never gotten a chance. We don't know. Maybe he's diamond in the rough and just needed a season or 2 of seasoning. And year 3, he's ready to go. He never got that opportunity.
Yeah, we've seen it, right? Some reclamation projects here in recent history with the Baker Mayfields, it was Sam Darnold, with Geno Smith. So maybe if he gets that opportunity, that would mean that Justin Herbert, something bad happens there. So you might not want to see it in LA. But it is interesting to see some of these quarterbacks that were high draft picks. They, to your point, they always seem to get those opportunities, at least to be on a roster. Trey Lance is still on a roster here in LA this year. I wanted to get your thoughts on some of these rule changes that we saw. And look, one of the things that drives me crazy each and every year has been the NFL overtime rule. And Geoff, I don't know how you feel as a former player, just as somebody observing the league for as long as I have. I cannot believe we still have the advent of a tie. And I thought they might get that solved this year. They didn't. You're going to have a possession. Every team's going to be able to possess the ball, but that's only if there's still time, because you still have a 10-minute overtime period. Geoff, did they really address the overtime situation here? Because to me, you're kind of kicking the can down the road. Yeah. I mean, I could possess the ball for 10 minutes and you could still never possess it in that equation here in the postseason or in the regular season now.
I'm fine with sudden death overtime again. Now, I think it's very difficult to do that because field goals are more easily attainable now, right? We guys are making, if you get the ball to 35 now, which is the new, as we'll talk about that rule change right after touchback. What do you got to go? 45, 45, 40, like 25 yards in the field goal range now with a 57-yard field goal and the game's over. So I'm not sure that's a solution, but I don't think extra football is great on our bodies as players. I don't think extra football turns it to the next week. We know the numbers, right? An overtime game, the team the next week typically is a little flatter, and it might just be 5 or 7 more plays, but it's just more football, right? It's more stress on the body, more opportunity to get hurt and dinged up. And there's 60 minutes to decide a game. You get a lot of plays, right? 65, 70 plays on each side of the ball, plus special teams. So I don't like ties either. I think they're un-American. I don't like them. I don't like to see them. But I'm not sure that playing an extra 10 minutes or 15 minutes to have an actual winner is worth it on the player's body. So I like the way it was. Don't win in 60 minutes. And the other thing too that that frustrates me about overtime, the way we talk about it, is people say coin flip shouldn't decide overtime. It doesn't, right? One team gets the ball. Defense is also part of the National Football League. It's okay to require your defense to get a stop. You ask them to do that in a 2-minute drill at the end of the game. You ask them to do it on the goal line on third down. But at overtime, it's too much for defense to be in charge of getting the ball back for their offense. Why do we just all of a sudden lose our minds on that? We'd say that around any other time of the game. Defense get a stop. Defense get a stop. Now in overtime, it's unfair for the defense to have to get a stop. So I'm fine with the way it was. Sure, they're making it now fair. But it doesn't move me very much. I would be okay if the game ended as soon as possible.
And that is a fascinating, different side of that equation that a lot of types like myself, that we do not take into that equation, which is the physical toll on the body by playing, an extra 15 minutes versus 10 minutes. I wish there was a way that we could make sure we get a winner. Like the kids in college, they're playing, until there's a winner, and sometimes it's exhausting to watch. Right? Yeah. Like I would almost rather have that without a clock, but we get a winner, but maybe we go to 2-point plays. Like anything. Would that be a better equation?
We should do like offensive lineman could just rotate field goal kicking until someone misses. Just have that would be the worst, right? It's just to make some gimmick. Baseball would do that, right? Just have some gimmick.
Yeah.
Which they sort of do when they put that runner on second base. Look, the best obviously is to play more football to determine a winner. Like I'm with you there. Think about a tie too. It's interesting. A tie is actually more of a win than a loss. It's kind of funny the way the standings work, right? Because it ends up being more of a win. And I think if you just say the game's over after 60 minutes, teams will play for ties because a tie is actually more impactful than you think in the standings. So I'm okay with what it is, but I'm not a fan of more football.
When we come back, let's talk about more of those rule changes. That's next here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz here with you on a Monday. Geoff, I am fascinated again by every year, the competition committee gets together. You got to vote on these things. Teams have to propose these ideas, and then they get kind of included into NFL law, if you will, right? So instant replay is always a hot button topic each and every year. First of all, where is your stance on it? Like, I feel like as the years and the decades have actually gone on, it's become almost more confusing sometimes with some of these rule changes, like what is a catch? And some of these, is a football move. And we've gotten so wordy with it as the years have gone on. Instant replay feels like it's a necessity. Are they getting closer and closer to using the technology properly to make sure we get calls right as much as we can get them right?
I think they are. I mean, I'm confused by what a kickoff is. I don't know what it is anymore. I have no idea. I'll wait till week 1 and figure out what the new rules are. But as far as the technology, right? So a couple things that I think that we need to have correct, right? Spotting of the ball needs to be correct. But I will say though, it's right most of the time. Like I think we look at it as something that's wrong all the time. It's right most of the time. Now, you could argue, did Josh Allen get over the line to gain or not? Maybe we have that technology one day to use. But measuring the first down with the Hawkeye technology is not going to change much of the game. We want the ball spotted correctly. And again, it ends up being spotted correctly more often than not. So, but I think that their decision to make, basically binary flags. Okay. Did it happen or not? Was there a face mask or not? Was there contact to the helmet or not? Was there a tripping or not? Those are yes or no, right? It's not, maybe there was a holding, maybe pass interference. Those things can easily be done, right? We see all the time, even go back to Super Bowl, right? Like Mahomes, I think it was Super Bowl, he slides. He very clearly is not hitting the head. They call a penalty. Just buzz down. Hey, man, not a penalty. And let's move it back 15 yards and play football. Oh, was it a face mask or wasn't a face mask? Like those feel so easy just to take 15 seconds, not even really just the ball's already spotted. You're ready to play football. Stop the clock, right? And just say, hey, man, we're going back 15 yards or forward 15 yards. Those feel very easy decisions to make in real time that'll make the game better. I'm not one of these people that thinks that every part of the game should be legislated by a sky judge. I think that's not the spirit of sports. I think that game will be unwatchable, quite frankly. We complain all the time as consumers of sport that the referees get too involved, and now we want the referees to be too involved. I don't, that we want things to be right. I get we do, but there are humans playing the game, and there are humans refereeing the game. We're going to be a bit of human error. It's not going to be perfect. So I think it's a good medium, right? We're not going to look at pass interference and holdings and all those things, but we look at roughing the passer, helmet contact or not. We look at face mask. That feels very simple as a rule change.
Yeah, and again, you alluded to it there with some of those changes that we can actually look at some of the bigger critical 15-yard penalties, automatic first downs, make sure that they get those right. You mentioned the kickoff too, the dynamic kickoffs, I put that in air quotes, will continue, but the touchbacks will now go to the 35 instead of the 30. I mean, I'm old, Geoff. I remember it was at the 20 for touchbacks, and now we're all the way up to the 35. Why not just put the ball at midfield? What are we doing? Is this just to increase offense?
I don't know. So obviously I'm old enough to play my entire career the ball spot at the 20. And I'm glad we're done with the wedge part of kickoff. That was miserable and not fun to do. For those who I would imagine people listening to this know what that is. Well, I'll explain what it was. You would basically run back a kickoff return, you'd hold hands, and you would basically all five of you, or three or two, would run full speed together as a pack and collision a defender. And that defender's sole job oftentimes was to be a wedge buster, was to run full speed and throw their body at the wedge to try to disrupt our forward progress. And that play was the worst play of all football. I mean, I knew guys that would put in extra pads under their shoulder pads, like a thigh pad or knee pad, just to absorb that blow. I did that. I didn't put the pads under, but you're running full speed and you're just like closing your eyes and it's not a healthy play. So I'm glad that's out of football. But the forcing this dynamic kickoff return to me feels unnecessary. Who is wanting this in football? I think a lot of us look at kickoff now, just get out of the end zone, spot the ball, and let's play ball. I get they're trying to put this back in the game. They're trying to force teams to have a kickoff return. And I don't know why it's necessary. I don't think anyone's clamoring all the time for kickoff returns. I think a lot of us would just be like, put the 25 and let's play ball. So they're just trying to force this dynamic return to be a thing. It does work in the UFL. It has worked at times in the NFL, but I think it was fine the way it was. And now that it's a punitive 35-yard line, if you kick the ball in the end zone, it feels like a very harsh penalty for the team kicking off.
I totally agree. It's like if we're trying to get rid of returns to limit injuries, why are you then? You're basically saying we want you. Right. You're trying not to kick the ball into the end zone anymore because now it's gonna be punitive to put it at the 35-yard line. So it feels like a mixed message there. Look, some of the rule changes that we're seeing on sportsmanlike conduct has now been, you can't do the thing for the first down anymore that a lot of the wide receivers like to do. Yeah. Finger guns are really bad, Geoff. You can't do those. That's going to be a 15-yard penalty. Michael Irvin never would have made it through the 90s. Like, what do we make of this? I get it. We're trying to be societal and let's not put a bad example for the kids out there, but
oh my kids. What about the kids, Dave? Do you have kids, Dave? I don't. We haven't worked together, I think, before. Do you have children? Okay, so I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old. They don't need to watch the NFL to pick up bad habits. I'll tell you that. My son's never watched an NFL game and been like, Dad, I'm doing the nose web celebration. When I get a base hit in baseball, like it's not. They don't need that to have bad habits form. So, look, I mean, the violent gesture. I mean, it's a lot. And I get. Look, I understand that there are kids watching, I would imagine, that are more impressionable than my children, and seeing finger guns, I guess could lead to them doing finger guns to someone else. Look, the NFL wants to police it. They feel it's a problem. The players will adjust. It's so funny how we went from a period where there was like no celebrations to then like endless celebrations to now we're back to sort of taking away celebrations. There was some hip thrusting they didn't like last year. They're going to eliminate some hip thrusting. the finger guns, the nose wipe. Look, the NBA is doing the same thing with the finger guns. I mean, just corrected a guy who had to miss time in the NBA for possessing a weapon. I mean, I get that punishment coming down, but I mean, I'm sort of pro let the players show their emotions.
Yes.
It's a very emotional game. It's a violent game. Let players look. I get the direct taunting sometimes can lead to fisticuffs. It doesn't happen very often, obviously, in football. It happens in other sports, hockey, sometimes basketball, baseball is a little different, but it doesn't lead to many fights in football. But I understand if you want to eliminate I made a big hit, I'm standing over a guy talking to his face. Okay, fine. Eliminate that. I get that. But a first down, a wide receiver celebrating, I don't know if that makes the game better by taking it out of the game.
Couldn't agree more. One of my favorite players growing up was Butch Johnson of the Dallas Cowboys. And yes, I used to do the put the guns in the holster thing like Butch would do after a touchdown. I thought it was one of the coolest celebrations.
Ruined you. Yeah.
That's not why I joined the Marine Corps. That's not why I did it, because of Butch Johnson. It did not have that influence on me. I want to ask you a little bit about the tush push. There's so much talk about it, obviously, with the Eagles and Nick Sirianni and the architect of that play. I appreciated some of the coaches that were honest as to why they were voting against it, because they were basically like, the ones that were like, well, we've done the data and it's about the injuries. No. Some are like, we just can't stop it. And then like Dan Campbell came out and said, no, I'm going to vote for it, because if it's a play that you can't stop, it should be incumbent upon us as coaches to figure out a way. They basically kicked the can down on that one. We're going to table it for now. But it did feel like there was momentum against the tush push. What's your thought on it as a former offensive lineman?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. Like Raheem Morris just said something like, we just can't stop it. I don't like it. At least be honest, right? There's no data. There's no data that shows it's a play that gets guys hurt. I saw that someone used a Jason Kelce quote a little bit out of context. Jason Kelce basically was asked a couple years ago about the play. He basically said it's tough on my body, but a lot of football is tough on our bodies. If they limited all the plays tough on our bodies, it wouldn't be a fun game anymore. It wouldn't be the same game. There's no data that shows their injuries happen, and I get the pushback is right that defenders aren't allowed to push other defenders anymore. And that certainly has changed, because back in the day, it was a field goal issue, right? Where as offensive linemen on the field goal protection unit, we'd have to just anchor down while they would push two defensive linemen on one offensive lineman. They push two guys. So we have four basically defenders on maybe one offensive lineman. And it was the offensive lineman in that situation. I'm not meeting force with force. I'm stationary. I'm just I think I got to eat that. This is a situation where they're force on force, right? So you have two teams colliding like this. I don't really see that as much of the same thing as a field goal protection versus field goal block situation. And again, like you can still, I think you can push a defender after the snap. You just can't do it pre-snap. Mm-hmm. And again, you're pushing the quarterback, the ball carrier, not the offensive lineman. So if the change is made, let's say, to allow defenders to push defenders, would it be a cornerback pushing a linebacker? Again, you're not pushing an offensive lineman. So I think pushing a defensive lineman is not really the same thing. So I just don't know what the line is here to be done. And I would leave it the way it is. The Eagles have a very successful play. It's a very skilled play, in my opinion. Not enough credits given to the Eagles offensive line and Jalen Hurts for their execution on this play. I keep it the way it is.
I agree. I'm a Cowboy fan. I don't think you should ban it at all. You got to be better. You got to figure out a way to stop it. What about the other argument I did hear? I can't remember which coach said it, but that it's not a game. It's not a play of skill. I heard that argument.
Yeah, they keep saying that. I disagree on that. I think that there's two skills on this play. Not Jalen Hurts' ability to squat a lot of weight. It's the Eagles' offensive line, that left side, right, center left side. So it's where he goes all the time, right behind whoever the center is, Juergens or Kelce, and then Dickerson and Mulata over on the left side. And one thing Hurts does, I think, is so important is watch the play. He waits for a split second after he gets the ball to go forward and allows the offensive line to get a little bit of push. Too often on quarterback sneaks, guys go right now, and you run into the back of your offensive lineman before they're able to get a little bit of separation. He does a great job of just waiting that split second and then sort of riding the back of the offensive lineman. So there's a skill set in what Hurts does in the Eagles offensive line. I think it's unfair to claim it as an unskilled play.
I agree. And again, if everybody else was as successful, why aren't there? They're not. The Eagles have perfected this thing, and it helps that your quarterback can squat over 600 pounds. That's for sure as well. All right, Geoff, when we come back, I want to get into some of your pre-draft needs that you see for teams out there. That'll be next when you come back with us right here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz here with you on a Monday. Jeff, with the April draft, it's already April, coming up here in a couple weeks. I want to get into some of the needs that you might have seen out there for certain teams, and maybe a couple that are a little bit off the beaten path. But let's start where we kind of started the conversation today. Obviously, it feels like after Jacksonville at 1, the intrigue really starts at 2 and 3. What do you see for needs for them? Not necessarily who they're going to draft, but in their bigger picture, what are some needs that you see there?
Yeah, so you look at the top of the draft, and Tennessee's going to draft Cam Ward. I think we know that already. But they have a lot of needs. Like again, I thought they would trade out at some point, but I guess if you love the quarterback, you might as well take them. But they have a lot of roster needs. You look at 2 with the Browns. You go back to quarterback. You need a quarterback. You need one. The Giants at 3, you'd say quarterback too, but they did sign Russell Wilson 1-year deal and Jameis Winston to be his backup. And look around that roster. To me, they just need more impactful players back into the defense, which you're not going to, maybe you take Travis Hunter and make him a corner. They need more wide receivers. They need just more players, right? When I look at roster, I look at just sort of what I call game wreckers, right? How many game wreckers do you have? You look at Philly, they have like 11, 12, 13, 14. The Giants just aren't there right now. They need more game wreckers. You look at New England. I mean, they need a left tackle in the worst way. Like even if Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are both there at 4, which feels impossible, I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a left tackle. I mean, just in the worst, some of these teams with these young quarterbacks, Dave, to me, the goal of this season, winning and losing is important, of course, but you have to end this season knowing if Drake May is your guy, if Caleb Williams is your guy. The only way to do that is give him the help he needs. And so you look at 4 with New England and Will Campbell, the left tackle at LSU, they need him. They need a left tackle. And maybe it's Membu or someone else, but they need someone in that position to give Drake May the best opportunity to succeed. And then at 5, I think Jacksonville feels like defensive line is the way to go for them. Maybe wide receiver feels early for that, but they're those top 5 teams, man, there's a lot of need for those guys.
You mentioned kind of those changing quarterback rooms, that the Giants obviously have a new 1-2. Tommy DeVito still there, potentially as the number 3. What about the Steelers now that they've moved on from Justin Fields? They moved on from Russell Wilson. We're still waiting on Aaron Rodgers. If he's potentially going to be there, we don't know. What do you make of the quarterback situation there in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Rodgers is a huge part of this discussion, right? If he signs, I think the need for quarterback goes away, but they're in the same conversation next season. They need a quarterback to the future. Pittsburgh, to me, has to be bold at some point. And the boldness has to come basically in a couple directions. And you can do it different ways. One is that they're never going to be bad enough, right, to draft in the top 5. It's just not what the Steelers are. But I would argue that maybe you need to be for a season, right? Like you have to suck it up 1 year and just take your medicine. Now, again, tanking is done Monday through Saturday. It's not done on Sunday. And so telling a Steelers team basically not to win games feels impossible to do. But you basically tank by having a terrible roster. You have a terrible quarterback, and you don't get any better on offense. I'm not sure Pittsburgh's there right now with the wide receivers, but losing to get a quarterback is one way to go. And the second way is to just be bold and trade up for a quarterback. But this is not the draft class to do that. I don't think you're trading up for Sanders. You might just stay where you are and get him. If Sanders doesn't go 2 or 3, I think he's fallen all the way to the 20s.
Wow.
But they need a quarterback, right? They need a quarterback. I mean, you look at where they're at right now. Mason Rudolph, is that what they're doing again? They're rolling that back for this season. Did you trade for DK Metcalf to have Mason Rudolph be your quarterback? So, Sanders, Jackson Dart, we'll talk a little bit later about some wagers I've made so far. I think Pittsburgh needs a quarterback in the worst way. You can wait to the second round, draft a quarterback. You absolutely can, but you're not really certain who you're getting. Is it Milroe? Is it Quinn Ewers? Is it Shuck? Like, who's available when you draft in the middle of the end of the second round? You don't have the opportunity to do that. If that guy's there at 2021, you might as well take him now.
It is fascinating what's going on in the Steel City from the quarterback perspective there, and whether or not Aaron Rodgers does, in fact, agree there. All those dominoes will fall once we find out about Aaron Rodgers. Jeff, I'm never going to be as big as strong as you, no matter how hard I try. But I got to tell you, I've checked out Huel. If you have not checked out Huel, go to Huel.com today. You can use my code. It's Shuffle. You're going to get 15% off your first order and a free gift. And I'll tell you this, Geoff, it helps me get through a show like today and every day. Great energy, and it is really good tasting as well. So check it out, Huel.com. I do want to get into some of these win totals in the NFL that we see out there. And I think I want to start with the Steelers, if you will, because Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record in the history of being a head coach of the NFL, which is
I'm speaking.
You've heard that before.
I have, yeah.
You could play the under, and that would mean for the first time ever, he would not have over a 500 record. Is this the year it finally comes down for Tomlin?
Geez. I mean, last year I lost money on this too, where I bet the under. So I did end up getting it back with a midseason under at some point. But I mean, as of right now, they're an underplay because they don't have a quarterback.
Right.
You know, you give me Aaron Rodgers, maybe I take the over. But right now, you have to go under, especially in the division with Baltimore and with Cincinnati. And let's just say that Cleveland does draft Shedeur Sanders. They're a better quarterback all of a sudden. So I will lean under for Pittsburgh for now. It's a little bit juiced to that direction. Look, some of these preseason numbers, you're not going to get the best juice, right? You're not going to find many of them for plus money. You have to just eat some of this. It's okay. It's part of the cost of business this time of year with some of these futures.
Yeah, 8.5 is that number. So again, do that math with 17 games. If you think they're going to not have a losing record again, as Tomlin has never had, you play the over. That's plus money, plus $1.10. The under right now is juiced, as you mentioned, Geoff, to minus $1.30. When you are handicapping some of these markets, and certainly when it comes to these win totals, what are you looking for? Obviously, quarterback is normally the first and foremost. How much do you look at coaching too and say, man, that quarterback and coach combination, that's where I might go to some overs?
Yeah. I look first and foremost at opponent quarterback, like who you're playing on your schedule, not teams, quarterbacks you're playing. Because you might play a team at the beginning of the season that you have a young quarterback. It'd be different at the end of the season, right? So you have to take it into consideration. Look at coaching as well. Quarterback play, obviously, just sort of division schedule, and also trendy, like New England over is going to be so trendy. And it feels like I'm just not going there right now. And I tend to be on the more conservative side with my futures where I don't back the trendy teams. And I sort of wait a year. I'm a little too late sometimes on some of these teams. And then I look at some of the numbers and think to myself, like, there's always going to be a team that wins 2 or 3 games or 4 games. Who's that team this year, right? Is it the Giants again? Is it the Jets at 5.5? I mean, one of these teams is going under, whose total is set at 5.5. And a couple of teams are going over that big number of 11.5. That's a large number. The Chiefs come to mind as a team that can probably do that. They seem to do that every single season. They go over most of the years Andy Reid's been their coach. So some of these numbers, that's kind of what I take into consideration with where I lean.
What is fascinating about that New England total, it's at 8.5. Now it's juiced to the under. Yeah. 9 wins for Mike Vrabel, year 1, year 2 for Drake May. I mean, I love all the additions, but Geoff, I'm with you. That just feels like way too heavy. I thought the total would be around 6.5, 7.5. It's at 8.5. So people are really buying what the Patriots are selling. I see the Cowboys, not my team, not your team, America's team, at 7.5, Geoff. 7.5. And they're double dog daring you to take the over, aren't they?
They are plus 105 on the over, maybe some even money somewhere else, under minus 125. I mean, look, they won 12 games 3 years in a row before last season. They have a new coach, and this is where the coaching comes into consideration, right? Like, Schottenheimer to me is a dead out. Like, I'm not wagering on a Brian Schottenheimer team. I mean, what has he shown? McCarthy won those games. A roster needs some improvement. I don't know what Schottenheimer is as a coach. I don't think it's going to be great. It's a team I probably don't feel like playing much this season unless I'm fading them, at least early in the season.
Fair. I mean, I'm a big Marty guy. I covered his dad in DC, so I have an affinity for that family.
Sure.
Like if he's half a Marty, can we get 8 wins?
Possibly. They don't have an easier schedule, right? But
yeah,
that's coming back off injury. I think they have a good pieces in place. They need another wide receiver. They need their offensive lines. I think it's going to be fine with the retirement, but they have enough pieces there. The defensive tackles weren't great last season, stopping the run. Maisie Smith has been basically nothing for them. The Micah Parsons contract thing kind of worries me, right? Like you haven't figured that out yet. Are you going to trade him? I if they trade him, obviously, I think your win total changes a little bit there. So there's just a lot of uncertainty with the Cowboys.
The other team in that division, obviously, everybody's chasing the Eagles as the reigning defendings. But how about the Commanders' win total sitting at 9.5? And it's juiced to the over minus $1.20. Hey, look, fantastic rookie year, Jaden Daniels, rookie of the year, blew away everybody. But Geoff, you know how this works. Do you get a book in the kid, or is the kid so good it doesn't matter what the book says?
Well, I think their schedule plays a role in this, right? So they have the AFC West this season. So these are their road games. They're at Dallas, they're at Philly, they're at Green Bay, they're at Kansas City, they're at Los Angeles Chargers, they're at Minnesota. It's a tough road. Miami, Atlanta. Maybe Atlanta, the time you play them, and Michael Penix is in the year too, and that's a tough game. So they just have, they got Eagles twice. I mentioned that. They got Chicago this season, Detroit. It's a tough schedule. I think that's why 9.5 it's where it's at, and people obviously looked on the over there. But again, you're going to be a dog in Philly and in Kansas City, maybe in Minnesota. Green Bay will be a pick 'em. Like these are 50-50 games on the road. These are going to be tough ones.
You mentioned there's always going to be a team that's just going to win 2-3 games. Well, the one that the books are saying that's going to be is Cleveland. Their win total is 4.5. It is juiced to the over minus $1.50. But how do you back an overplay that they get at least 5 wins in that division if we don't know what's going on at quarterback?
I think if you think another way to bet on Sanders being the Browns quarterback is taking their win total over. Like if you think he's their quarterback, I think over is a play here. I think in that offense with the offensive line that they have and some of the weapons, and look, Stefanski, made Baker Mayfield into an MVP candidate. Like he can do that with Sanders. So it is year one, but I think Sanders is a mature, older quarterback. That's his dad is Dion. He's been in the limelight. He's been in the spotlight. I don't think playing in the NFL is going to overwhelm him at all. So if you think he's going number 2, this is, I think, to me, a play on the over. If you think the Browns going to draft someone else, I think the under is the play.
I do not know what they're going to do in the draft, and I guess that's good if that's by design for them. Maybe they know what they're doing, but we don't know what they're going to do.
They might not yet. There's still 4 weeks left. There's 4 weeks left. They might not know.
They might not know. They're still maybe formulating those opinions. All right, when we come back, let's get to some of those draft day props that you already have in pocket. We'll explain those next here on the GM Show.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle here, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz here with you on a Monday. Geoff, how much of your opinion changes of a team after the draft? Obviously, we've gone through the bulk of free agency. We've seen a lot of these rostered shifts, certainly at the quarterback position and these different quarterback rooms. How much does it change at all for you once we get through the April draft?
No, not really. Because, look, the teams that win divisions typically have the best quarterback in that division. And no one coming in right now is going to change that, right? Cam Ward, maybe if you love Cam Ward, you think Tennessee's going to be better. I think Sanders, I think can be good, but I'm still sort of 50-50 on Sanders. And that's about it, right? I mean, I guess for individuals, if Pittsburgh ends the draft with no Aaron Rodgers and no quarterback, better than they're under, right? But for most teams, it's not going to be that drastic. Yeah, there are holes to fill. If you don't fill that hole, do I think less of you? Possibly, but, not getting an offensive tackle if you're New England, but you get Travis Hunter instead or Abdul Carter. Am I really changing my opinion on you? Probably not.
Yeah, that's the interesting way. So maybe these numbers won't change as much as we've seen. You found some props out there for the draft market where you've identified what position, doesn't have to be the player, but a position that certain teams will draft. Can you tell the people what you've explored there?
Okay. So the draft, I try my best to make sure that I have ways to obviously make money if different things happen, because I think the worst place you want to be in is you have all these draft props and no chance to win. Like if you think draft's gonna go one direction and that's the way you wager on it, you kind of get screwed, I think, if it doesn't go that way. So I try to find different ways to wager on the draft. I have players to be drafted at certain positions. I take some long shots. I take some things I think are going to happen at less money. I don't really buy the idea that all the draft props have to always be a quote unquote value, right? Oh, you got to be 5-1 for it to be. No. It's okay to lay a little bit of juice on these, but we're not really doing that today. So, look, go to DraftKings. They have a tab up, draft team specials. You could look at all the division, tell you which player we drafted first for every team, and you could go through it and sort of pick out the ones you like. So the ones I have in pocket so far, and luckily I've gotten some good numbers on these, but I'll give you out what I think is still playable. So the Steelers to draft a quarterback first, right? First drafted player is 3-1. It's plus 300 right now. It's the second listed for them. Defensive line edge is number one at plus 180. But again, we talked about this all show. Dave, what does Pittsburgh do if Aaron Rodgers is not on the roster by the draft? This is basically a bet against Aaron Rodgers being on the roster. If they're pick 21, I mean it's pick 21 or 22, and there's no quarterback on that roster, 21, you're drafting Jackson Dart. I don't know how you don't. So I like that 3-1 right now. I think that number comes way down.
Well, that's a fascinating handicap because, again, if they don't have Aaron Rodgers, and there's a real possibility that doesn't happen. I mean, every passing day, I don't know why we just all assume that it's going to get done and he's going to be in the Steel City. You know, you would thought that would have been done a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And here we are getting closer and closer to the second week of April, and there's still no Aaron Rodgers there. Yeah, that number, by the way, you have in pocket, if he doesn't sign, that won't be 3-1 anymore, people. That'd be like even money. So I think you get some real value in that ticket. Give me another team in a position that maybe you see that this is a need, and that's why it was worthy of a wager for you.
Yeah. So I like the Chiefs to draft a defensive or edge player at plus 175 right now. So you look at the way the draft breaks down. This is an important part of this process of sort of figuring out which positions of need teams have, but also how deep the draft is, right? So the Chiefs really have to, in my opinion, a couple position needs, right? One, everyone says offensive line. I don't quite buy that. They drafted players the last couple of years to play. Those guys have to play at some point. They went in free agency, got a left tackle. Jawan Taylor's still there. They have an interior offensive line. Like, and to me, they're set. And at 31, look at the draft. How many offensive linemen are available at 31 in this draft that'll be right away starters? They drafted the project guys already. Those guys are playing this season. They need a defensive pass rusher in the worst way. This is a draft full of pass rushers. And especially need an interior guy, in my opinion, to pair with Chris Jones. So you look at the board, I think this is what they have to do. They need a running back too, but I don't expect that to happen early in the draft. Maybe they want one more corner or secondary player. Don't see that happening this early in the draft. So to me, this is a pass rush heavy draft. Take that guy at 31.
Fascinating. Again, you're right. You think of the Chiefs and you're right there in the Super Bowl 3 years in a row. Get some help with Chris Jones on the inside. Not a bad way to build your board there if you're in Kansas City. How about Seattle and what they're doing, Geoff? Because I look at them and I go, I trust John Schneider. I think I like McDonald in year 2 as a young head coach here. But you cleaned out the wide receiver room. You cleaned out the quarterback. And we're going all new now with Sam Darnold. What do you think they have to do now to really get some help in front of Sam Darnold?
Yeah. So there's 2 choices for Seattle, right? I think in the first round, wide receiver, which they need, they desperately need, and then offensive lineman. And again, you have to play sort of this game, right? Where it's what are you getting at where they're picking, right? So I'm going to pull up their exact draft position. They're picking 18th, okay? And in this draft, and you've done a lot of the draft prep previous to me joining the show, so I think you'll understand where I'm going here. You know, this is a wide receiver heavy draft. It's a great wide receiver draft. There's wide receivers all over, and we're seeing too. You can find wide receivers rounds 1 through 5. I mean, they're all over the place. These guys come in and play well immediately. And this is an offensive line draft that's very top heavy. Now, top heavy talent's not what we had in previous years, but after the first round, I think you're hard pressed to find immediate starters now. I think Seattle wants immediate starters now. And at 18, Tyler Booker might be there from Alabama to play interior offensive line. Ray Zabel might be there from NDSU to play. He played tackle, played 4 positions in college. He was tackle last year. He'll play interior offensive line in the NFL. If you wait to the second round to draft that guy, I don't know. I don't know who's there in the second round. You feel great about on a wide receiver in the second round in this draft. So I took them to draft offensive lineman. I think I got a I don't know if it's plus 100 right now. I might have gone minus 110 or plus 110, somewhere around there. So plus 100, it's a clear favorite. Offensive line is plus 100, wide receivers 3.5 to 1, and then you got safety, tight end, all other positions. So I think offensive line at 18, man, you're in that sweet spot where you're probably going to get one of those 2 offensive linemen available. And you have to draft them because I think in the second round, no one comes to my head who's like, that guy's going to be there and be a starter immediately inside for you guys.
You know, what's also something I've learned through the years is I remember being in a practice in D.C. with the old Redskins with Trevor Maddich, who now does great work at ESPN. And Trevor and I were sitting there on day one of training camp, and we're looking at one of their prize rookie offensive linemen. And Trev just looks at me and he goes, can't play in the NFL. And we're seeing the exact same thing. And I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, bad feet. Like, Geoff, you know this is an offensive lineman. What are you looking for that determines whether a guy is a first-round worthy offensive lineman versus somebody a little bit deeper in that draft?
All right, so the first thing I do when I watch offensive lineman, I kind of go backwards, actually. I watch sort of the end of the play. I watch the whole play first, but I focus on the end of the play, right? Because I want to see how they finish. Now, we equate finish with a pancake. It's not the case for a lot of players, right? I mean, you might get 3 or 4 a game in the NFL, 2 a game. I mean, it's hard to finish and pancake a guy. But the finish, the straining to finish, right? Moving a man from point A to point B against his will, that takes good technique to do that. And so if I see a player doing that, then I can go backwards. Okay, why is this, right? Are their hands and feet where they have to be? Now, if they're not a finisher, if they fall off blocks, if they whiff in space, you work backwards again, right? Why is that, right? Are their hands where they have to be? Their feet underneath them? Do they understand angles in space? And that's sort of where I start. And then especially if the lower level you get, so if you're Will Campbell at LSU, you're playing SEC defensive ends, you're not going to have as much finish. It's tougher, right? If I see a group of 5 kid, I want to see a little more finish. If I see an NDSU kid, a Dakota school kid, I want to see it dominate on film. You need to be dominating on film. I want to see those nasty finishes, right? Which we see with Cody Mach, who's now in Tampa Bay, right? The highlight film of him from North Dakota State. I want to Mason McCormick, who's a Steelers offensive lineman from last year, drafted in the 4th round from South Dakota State. I want to see that on film, and those guys showed that. And so that's where I start, And then you look at the intangibles and things like that, stance and starts and strength and power and how they use their hands. So that's sort of my baseline of where I begin.
I love it. Again, those are things that you guys know from playing the positions that I think a lot of people on the outside go, oh, great, we got this offensive lineman. Is he any good? That's what you're looking for, that technique and those things that you're talking about. Geoff, I did make a couple plays, and these right when these numbers came out here in Las Vegas. I did play the Bengals at 20-1 to win the Super Bowl next year. Hopefully you get to a title game or at least get in the playoffs. They didn't make it last year. The numbers come down a little bit, but they still haven't signed. It was all predicated to me that they get Jamar Chase back, you get T. Higgins back, and you get Trey Hendrickson back. They've got 2 of those 3. Is this offense, which was generational a year ago, and they didn't make the postseason, the defense is going to have to carry its weight a little bit in order for that ticket to even have a chance, isn't it?
Yeah, the Bengals are I think frustrating if you have a ticket on them, because look, defense, I think the regular season obviously is less important than maybe offense, but come postseason time, you got to get stops. I mean, look at the Super Bowl champions over the years, right? Even the Chiefs for the champions they've had, the thing that they have had in those years is really good defense. The first championship wasn't great defense. They've been better lately. Look at what Philly did to Kansas City, right? Look at what the Rams did on the final play of the game against the Bengals. That's such an important thing. And do the Bengals have that right now? I would say no, still no. They're very young. And I like Al Golden, the hire from Notre Dame, to be their DC. And he was good there a couple of years ago. If they can develop that talent, you probably got a good number, because look, week 8 and 9, it's like, oh, the defense is average, just average. They don't need to be the best with Joe Burrow on offense. If you look it up, it's like, oh, their DVOA, their EPA, whatever is 15, 16, 17, and they're getting better each week. I think you probably have a good wager on your hands. I don't have that in pocket right now because I just don't know if they're going to get there quick enough for me, but it certainly can happen.
And that's the thing. It's going to be predicated on, can they get better? And you're right. Maybe early in the year, it could be a lot of struggles defensively for Golden and company, but hopefully as the team molds into shape, maybe those wins and losses early aren't as an indicator of what this defense can be. That's what I'm hoping for. Just be middle of the pack because we know that offense is elite. Hey, Geoff, really appreciate you hopping on the GM Shuffle this week, and hopefully you get to do it again.
Sounds good.
Great stuff.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks, Geoff. Appreciate your time as always. And thanks to everybody out there watching and listening. And we'll see you next week right here on the GM Shuffle.